Hey everyone, welcome to Comic Artist Pro Secrets. We are live. This is Ethan Van Sciver, and we've got a very cool show tonight. I'm lining up great guests. I don't know what to tell you. It must be my charming, sparkling personality. It must be my endless charisma because I have a comedy icon on the line with us tonight, and he is dear to me and dear to, I guess, most of you who are big Mystery Science Theater fans. He is the second guy to play Crow, and I hate to say it, I think the superior Crow. And his name is Bill Corbett. Hello, Bill. How are you?
Hey, Ethan. Thank you for the kind intro. Appreciate it.
Oh, I mean, honestly, it is a pleasure to have you. I have been a fan of Mystery Science Theater since its very start. Well, maybe around 91. I guess I missed some of the early stuff. But when you came on, and I've told you this before, I think your first episode was called Angel's Revenge. And
that was the first one I wrote on. But the first one I was actually Crow on was Revenge of the Creek.
Right, that was when it went to sci-fi. But I will tell you honestly, Angel's Revenge came out on VHS. Okay, it was one of the few episodes that made it to VHS, and I noticed the sharp difference, the improvement in comedy. I laughed so hard at that episode, and still to this day, that is one of my favorites. And I have to attribute it to you and your writing.
Oh, you're too kind. I think the movie did a lot of work on that one.
It was so bad. It was terrible. I mean, I like the parallelogram vision. Did you write that line? Do you remember?
No, I didn't.
Okay, but it was really, really terrific. And since you came on the show, and I'll say this, I'll put it this way, and don't take this the wrong way. I mean this in the best possible way. The show got slightly spicier, slightly meaner when you came on.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, there's a little bit of a tone of kind of a little bit of your acerbic wit that came through that just didn't seem to be there before you. And something about when Mike came on board. People say that they prefer Joel in some cases, and other people think Mike is better. But I think the real contrast is the way the robots treated the two, whereas Joel was kind of a parental figure, and Mike was kind of like the screw-up big brother who got bullied by his little
very
brothers.
well put. Yep.
I mean, was that a conscious decision with you guys? It was just, or did it happen naturally, or did you just say, what's the difference between Mike and Joel?
I think it absolutely happened naturally, and before I even got there. I think it just seemed like an organic choice. Joel as their inventor, and then Mike as the noob who they have to sort of break in. So there was already a status differential there.
It was terrific. It was wonderful. So you were there right at the end of the Comedy Central days, and what was that like? What was the mood around the group at that point? Because things were really starting to fracture and change.
Yeah, I mean, it was great fun for me because I got to the show a little bit later than some, but once I found it, I loved it so much that it was a real honor to sit in. And I was a pal of Mike's mostly, although I knew a couple of people there, and just mentioned to him one day, hey, you mind if I sit in and see if I'm a good fit for you guys? And to my surprise, he said, sure. And they had a lot going on at the time because the movie was being written and all this other stuff. So they did need extra hands writing wise.
So you helped write the movie?
What's that?
You helped write the movie?
No, that script had been around for a while and in a development purgatory for some time. But they were actually filming the movie for some of my time there. And they needed to keep the home fires burning with the show. So I was doing that. Yeah, and it was a pretty exciting time because a lot of stuff was going on. And then for season 7, it kind of crashed when they didn't get a big contract renewal. And Frank Conniff left, and it was just a lot of transition. So they had like, I think it was just 6 or 7 shows. So season 7 is a pretty short season, and they weren't at all sure that they were going to be coming back. In fact, they weren't coming back on Comedy Central.
There's a real sense towards that time of kind of, and I've talked to Joel about this, of cliques beginning to form, of people kind of deciding, and you feel it as a fan. I mean, you just feel like the sides are being chosen, and people are kind of leaving, and you know, it's interesting. It's like you came on at the right time to kind of reinvigorate the creative staff of Mystery Science Theater. I mean, the other creators, and launched them towards sci-fi, because the show could have died at season 7, don't you think? I mean,
yeah, I mean, they did have an actual ending, and for all they knew, it was going to be that was going to be that. It was a good ending too. I mean, it was a smart and funny and sci-fi literate ending. But I think they did want to keep it going, and then they got teased, I think, by Comedy Central for a while, but there was all sorts of silliness going on there too. And then, yeah, I had moved out to LA and I was writing screenplays, and I got a call from Mike one day and basically said, "We're back." So said, "Do you want to come write on the show?" And I said, "I'd love to. I guess I have to move back though, don't I?" Which I was fine with doing at that point. And it wasn't until I was there for a couple of weeks writing that I got Crow handed to me, and they said, "Be Crow, dude."
Well, they did. I mean, okay, so that was a sudden thing. I mean, because Trace was already gone, so Trace was not.
Trace was already gone. Back. Yeah.
And they didn't know who Crow was going to be. They didn't know who Crow was going to be at that point, and we're looking around, and then just kind of chose you. I mean, you make a big joke about not being much of a puppeteer at that point.
Oh, I wasn't though. I really wasn't.
But you learned fast.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of had to, but yeah, when I look at the latter seasons of Trace, what a wizard he was with the puppet, and then I look at my first shows in season 8, it's hard not to feel a little, twinge of shame there, but I got up to speed pretty quickly. So yeah, they didn't know who Crow was going to be, and I think they were really trying to avoid the question because it was a real tough one. And they also weren't entirely sure. We weren't entirely sure because I was a writer then, and I didn't know that I was going to be acting in anything at all. I mean, I had been just hired as a writer, not as a performer. So they, did entertain the idea of like, well, maybe Crow is gone. Maybe just we have to make a new bot to go with Servo, or. Oh. I mean, that was one possibility. So it was sort of the maybe the better of two bad choices, like replace Trace or get rid of Crow. So they auditioned some people from the community, like actors and comedians, and a couple of people from staff. And I think, I will be honest, there's sort of a natural propensity at Best Brains to give, to have the people who were already there do stuff.
Yeah.
It's just easier. And yeah, and I auditioned, and I thought my voice was okay, but my puppeteering was just god awful. In fact, I didn't get it at all. But
well, let me re-encourage you and actually just give you a different perspective on that, because your Crow, first of all, before I say that, your voice as Crow, now it's a version of what you're doing now, but it's sharper. You have to put on a voice to be Crow. Isn't that correct?
At first I was basically trying to imitate Trace, because that seemed respectful and right. And Kevin and Mike and Jim Mallon basically said, look, you don't really have to, do your own version of it, feel natural. And it turns out my voice isn't all that different than what I used. So naturally funny voice. But yeah, it's heightened, it's more cartoony, of course, and greater hysterical emotional range.
Will you say "Hey Mike" as Crow right now?
Hey Mike.
Yay!
It's just comes pretty. My kids make me say stuff in Crow voice every now and then. I've had to put the kibosh on that. It's like you don't get to have an ongoing performance from Pop here.
Oh my God, I that just sent a shockwave through me. That was awesome. Thank you so much for that. So this is what I wanted to say about your puppeteering. Now, because of your Crow and his kind of sharp voice, that kind of like very staccato kind of voice, the way you were puppeteering Crow in the first episode, in the first few episodes, was really, really good because it seemed like you were making his beak just like flap really hard along with your kind of voice, and it was so much fun. It was a like just saying "Hey Mike" and then just like clapping that beak was funny for some reason.
I was not a subtle touch with the puppet. It was like flap, 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 flap.
Yes,
flap.
yes. It looked great, and it was very, very, very funny. So I love those early episodes in season 8. Do you have a favorite from season 8 that stands out, or do you block them all out at this point?
No. I mean, after a show or two, I was having so much fun. The terror had abated a little bit. I mean, it was so much fun to do it that it sort of overcame my fear of screwing up the show, really. And, initial reaction seemed to be pretty good. People were very kind, all in all. So yeah, then I just started to have fun, and it was fun writing for it too. And I felt a lot more confident about that part of it. So
how were the guys taking you in? Were they making you part of a family?
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I knew them somewhat before from working with them on season 6. And I was a writer, and I was never really a stand-up comedian, but I did a lot of comedy, like sketch comedy and stuff like that. So I had worked with some of them, and I had actually taught classes that one or two of them had taken in screenwriting. Which is sort of laughable to think of me as their professor, but it wasn't really. It was really glorified adult ed. But so I knew some of them, and I was comfortable with them, and we were, it's a pretty small community of comedy and theater artists and the way that intersected in town. So I was pretty comfortable with them, and everyone was fun, and I don't know. It was a dream job.
Well, I just see you all as kind of intellectuals, especially you and Kevin together. I mean, Mike is a little bit more of an everyman, it seems like. I don't know what his personality is really like. I've never spoken to Mike.
Oh, Mike is probably more of an intellectual than anybody. I mean, in terms of his thirst for highfalutin stuff.
Really?
And that's part of the irony is he didn't graduate college, and he went to like Wisconsin state schools, and I went to Yale. And I am so much more lowbrow than Mike Nelson. He loves classical music. He reads at a very high level, and I'm just like a pop culture,
Wow.
doofus.
It's the reverse of everything that I kind of expected. But, I mean, because you graduated Yale, you've got a BA at Yale College and an MFA at the Yale School of Drama.
Yeah,
highly educated, and
they'll take anyone.
Wonderful. So you got 3 seasons of Mystery Science Theater, and they are among the best. One of my favorite episodes is Riding with Death, which
I love that one.
Oh, I could watch that one over and over again. The sexual metaphors between the 2 trucks is absolutely hysterical. Just great episode. I'm really glad that all that stuff got released. We're still missing a few episodes from Shout Factory. I guess they're never going to see the light of day.
It's tricky. I mean, they have to, if the deal for the original movie wasn't renewable, or if they just hit the rocks in some kind of re-upping the movie rights, then sometimes they just don't appear until never. But I think eventually they'll all get out in some form, because it's just too much. I don't know. There's too much demand for them, and some of these titles are like, "What are you holding on to that for?" I mean, who's seeing that if not through our show? Yeah, yes. But they will make money.
Yeah. Let it out, make money off of the Mystery Science Theater version of it, for goodness sakes. So what was it like in close quarters with Kevin Murphy? I mean, I have to imagine that you guys got to know each other really well. You're crouched down in a pit, right, behind that.
Right.
that's pretty remarkable. I mean, two men. It's like you guys in a foxhole, essentially.
It really was like a foxhole for artsy fartsy people, and we weren't technically, we each had our own little foxhole, and there was large Mike Nelson there, like a half person above us. So I got to know Mike's footwear very well.
Yeah, what's he wear?
He just wore sort of Midwestern tennis shoes most of the time.
Yeah,
comfortable, casual, puppet show shoes.
Puppet show shoes. That's brilliant. So it ended in three seasons. It came to an end at last, and for a minute, you guys kind of took a break, didn't you?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of lag time between when we filmed the last episode and then when it came on the air. So we took a little bit of a break, but then by the time that was even on the air, we were doing stuff together again. And they kept running them for some years afterwards. And we were all like, you know what, guys, you're running it anyway. Why don't we make you some new ones? Like, what are you doing here?
And what was their reason for that? I mean, were you guys too high budget for the size? I mean,
well, I think they wanted to run them until people got what they thought was like people got sick of them. I don't know. I'm speculating here. And they had airtime to fill, but they didn't want to keep paying for a show in production. That's my guess anyway. But Kevin and I started a website for a while, a humor website called TimmyBigHands.com, which is a very short-lived but fun website. We just got an office together and we slapped it up there and we had a lot of fun, but realized at some point we can't really make a living from this. we should stop this weird habit we're getting into.
Where was Mike?
We were all together in the same office in suburban Minneapolis, and it was Kevin and Mike and I, and we started this. I don't know what to compare it to, maybe like Spy or Cracked or something like that, but it was weirder, and we did some just homemade animations. We were all learning Flash, and I don't know what was. I think we just kind of wanted to hang out and pretend we were still working. So
yeah.
And we got a couple of little acknowledgments from it, like Spin Magazine and Newsweek and a couple of others. But, we just barely paid enough to make our rent there.
Well, it wasn't too long before you guys decided. And I remember this, and I remember rejoicing over this because it really felt like a Mystery Science Theater reunion. The first one, you guys did something called the Film Crew.
Oh, yeah.
Which was kind of a primitive version of what was to become RiffTrax. Now, okay, so take me through that and tell me why that didn't work out that way and you guys decided to spin it off into something different.
Yeah, I mean, the real one-sentence difference between the two in this Film Crew was bankrolled by a company that was producing it, and we didn't have any production power. And RiffTrax is our own thing, so nobody can make us stop doing it, whether they want to or not.
Did someone choose the movies for the Film Crew then, or did you guys choose them?
We did it together. I mean, we kind of hunted for them and gave them a menu of things, and like they looked at them and decided if they could buy them. And those were really good material. I mean, we only did 4 episodes, but each one of them, the movie was really pretty aces, I thought. Yeah, that was through Rhino Entertainment, Rhino Records. And they had done the early MST3K collections, and they produced it. And then it just got weird. Something happened. We're not exactly sure what, but they pulled the plug. And then Shout Factory, our heroes, sort of took it over. But I think once again they just felt like, let's see how these sell, and we're not sure. It was just probably a bad business model at the wrong time. They were DVDs just when things were getting digital, and they hadn't digitized them yet. So,
Shout Factory just seemed to have a lot of enthusiasm for releasing this material and then doing it the right way and getting you guys back together to.
They sure do, yeah. They're
They
pretty
really
great.
show the show some respect, and we all love seeing you guys. But all right, so let me make this subtle comparison. You, Mike, and Kevin are Paul McCartney, and Joel and the rest of the crew are and Cinematic Titanic are John Lennon. And how do you grunt at that? Do you groan?
No, I didn't groan. I'm trying to parse it out in my brain here.
Okay.
I mean, you don't lose either way.
No, you're both great. I just think I always think Paul McCartney's more prolific, and Cinematic Titanic would be John Lennon would be stunted. It ended too quick. It's just not doing as much stuff. It's great, and you want it, but mostly the point is that you want these two guys to get back together again.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, that fans kind of are in the dark about. I mean, everyone has theories. Misty's all talk about this endlessly. How can we get everyone back together again? How can we get everyone back into costume? The robots and back on the satellite of love. And
Well, they should reboot Mystery Science Theater, I think, probably.
Okay, so they should.
I'm only kidding.
And well, okay, look, so they should, and they kind of did.
No, that was my feeble joke.
Yeah. So well, okay. So I want to talk about RiffTrax, but first let's jump ahead to that very subject.
Yeah.
The Mystery Science Theater reunion remake. What would you call it? A reboot? What'd you think?
Well, I think. Do you mean what would I call the 11th season with Jonah and company?
Yeah. What would you call it? And also, what was your opinion of it? And what do you?
You know what? I'm not going to get into it, Ethan, in detail, just because I have a lot of feelings about it, some of which I don't really want to get into. And I'm not an objective. I'm very non-objective about it because I was part of the show, and now they had a new version of it. So it was a little confusing. It was nice in a lot of ways. They included us, which was cool. Also a little odd to see new people in the role when we're still somewhat able-bodied, I think. But all in all, it's I like everybody doing the show. I love Jonah. He's a great guy. I met the new guys doing the bots. They're really excellent comedians and cool people. But it's weird. I won't lie to you.
Thank you. It is weird. Now let me tell you what I know about this, and I will tell you, and maybe you can nod quietly in the background or whatever, because I know you're not going to say anything. I took a meeting with Joel in Philadelphia, and he hired me to help kind of put that show together. And I was from the very beginning. I mean, so I was kind of involved with this a little bit. And I said to him, I said, Joel, you're not going to like this, but what you're planning to do, you have some great ideas, and they're wonderful and everything, but you're making the new monkeys is what you're trying to do. Mystery Science Theater is not just a concept, it's a group of people, it's a family. And the reason why the fans are so devoted to it is not because we particularly love people making fun of movies on TV. I mean, that now has become so commonplace. Other people do it. It's not a big deal. You can see Mystery Science Theater ripoffs on YouTube left and right. It's about the people that we got to know, the voices, the attitudes, the personalities that we all got to know and love. And without them, this is going to be a tribute show. This is going to be a pale imitation. So, and I said to him, please, I got down on my hands and knees, please, just bring back the guys. That's all. And you do it. The best thing in the world would be to have Joel and Mike together on the satellite of love. Everyone, every character in it, and then just pick those movies like you used to. It would be a Beatles reunion, is what it would be. And he said, "Oh, I don't want to hear that." He's like, "Ethan, no. When you see the talent that I've put together, then you will you'll know, you'll see the wisdom in what I've done. And I said, okay. And I ended up just backing out of it. I didn't want to do it. But he wanted me to design a bunch of stuff on the set, and I didn't want to do it. But he did kind of what I expected he was going to do, which was hire established and well-known kind of geek comedians that everybody already knew. And so they don't. The wonderful thing about the cast of Mystery Science Theater was we'd never seen you guys in anything else before. So you were Observer. You weren't some guy who we'd seen 800 other places now playing this other role. You were Observer. You were Crow. You were all the roles that you played. I'm sorry, but these guys, they're pretenders. And Joel said, and I watched the first 2 episodes and says, Will Wheaton's in this. I'm out of here. He said that he was going to have you guys come in and do little guest roles. Did you end up showing up and doing anything?
Yeah. Kevin and Mary Jo and I were on 2 of the shows. Just like little drop-by things. They were cameos.
Were you Observer?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll watch that then. That's cool.
The makeup looks a little weird, but yeah, the pretentious accent is still there.
I mean, one of the greatest things was they did this extra feature on the Gila Monster disc, I think, that had Joel and I think Frank ended up playing Tom Servo and Trace doing Crow, and they just kind of digitally remade the Satellite of Love again and did these skits, and it still works. It's still magic.
Mm-hmm.
So on behalf of Mystery Science Theater fans everywhere, and I think I easily represent them because I'm a huge fan. I have everything. And I love you guys dearly. I hope at some point, and we've seen the Mystery Science Theater reunion show that you guys did, which was wonderful as well. I hope you guys can get back together again. And if that opportunity arises, would you do it?
I think the short answer is sure. I do like everybody involved with the show. I think it's complex in ways that I probably don't even understand, the cross currents of feelings about creating a show and the history of it, and how you would mix that all together. As a creator, I start to puzzle on, like, well, how would you mix all that together, and how would it just not seem like a big, weird, I don't know, the Brady Bunch get back together. They're technically the same people, but it's just like, I wish they had not done this. So I think that's a real danger if you were to do it. And just we're older. I mean, there's an element of pathos to that. Not that I would have to worry. I'm underneath the desk, but
you guys also look great, and we've seen you though. I mean, so we see you all the time because we're all buying everything RiffTrax. And so we know what you look like. It's not like it would be a sudden shock.
Just like from underneath the ogre hill.
No, you guys look great, and I think it was really cool. So that's just something that I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Ethan. That's very kind of you.
From my heart. I mean, I really mean it. So RiffTrax. Now, RiffTrax, if we can't get Mystery Science Theater back, you guys have been wonderfully prolific. Producing, terrific movies. The worst of the worst movies. Wonderful stuff. That's, Santa Claus Meets the Ice Cream Bunny. Really, really strange movies. It is just as good as Mystery Science Theater, although we do miss the robots. Now, what is the schedule like for that? Is that like a television show situation where you guys get together and say, hey, we're going to make 13, we're going to choose 13 movies and we're going to put them out this year or in the next 6 months, or how does it work?
Well, we don't have a season. We're just sort of rolling along, and we definitely have a calendar a couple of months in advance. Obviously, production is so much easier because we're all audio outside of our live shows. So that's the main difference, which is kind of night and day in terms of getting stuff out there. I miss a lot of the old stuff, like the hangout aspect of it, the writing room aspect of it, and just like going to the same place and working together every day. But sometimes it's really nice to just write on your own and get it done, and try to get it done. Yeah, it's sort of the reverse of how we used to do it. We used to watch the movie together, and then, I mean, after we had screened a whole bunch of them and decided which ones would work and which ones wouldn't and which ones we could get rights to, we would all watch it together and just sort of blurt jokes out, and some poor sap would have to sit there and type, and we would take turns being that poor sap. But so it was just this recording of, it was a transcription of us and our initial jokes. And it was a little bit inefficient in some ways, because you wind up typing a lot of jokes that can't even fit in the moment. If you just go on like 30 seconds more, you go, oh yeah, that will not fit with that at all. But the cool thing was you could sort of riff off each other, and somebody comes up with an okay idea for a joke and just sort of puts the subject in the middle, and then somebody kind of like serves it like a volleyball slam, just makes it a better joke on the same topic. And those were the ones. But then a couple of us, myself included, would go off and actually write the script and assign the lines to Mike and the bots. And then from there, we would just keep, refining as we went. But now we each take like a third or a fifth of the movie, depending on who's working on it. I mean, it's Mike and myself. Kevin is now the producer more than a writer, but we have two staff writers, Connor Lastoka and Sean Thomason, who work with us. So we'll divide it into 4 or 5 or whatever, and then we'll each write a chunk of it, just like a first draft. And that gets it closer to the final product, but it is a little more laborious to start and not as much fun. But then the rest of it becomes easier. It's just a little bit of horse trading for lines, and then when we get together, it's just pure fun and kidding around.
So you would read someone else's lines? Is that the way it's always worked? Like
always,
Mike
yeah.
Write a line, he assigns it to you, or how?
Well, assign sounds more formal than it really is. For the most part, we just did it in a round robin. It was not all that formal a process. It's like we didn't want to have like 4 crow lines in a row, so it would just be basically Mike Servo Crow, Mike Servo Crow, with some exceptions. And for the most part, I think I'm trying to remember if I think I still feel this way with RiffTrax, that any of us can do any line is sort of the default, but then every now and then just something sounds a little better. Like Mike is really good at deadpan. He's really good at certain imitations, like he's mastered the Nick Nolte imitation. So in fact, that's why we have a running Nick Nolte bit. It used to just be references to Nick Nolte, and then one we actually had Mike do a couple of words as Nick Nolte, and we all got that sort of lizard brain stimulus of like, that's funny, let's do more of that, that's fair. So suddenly Nick Nolte had big monologues, talking about his escapades, trying to sell black market crap and stuff like that. For the most part, if there's like a really virtuosic singing bit, it goes to Kevin because he's got a wonderful voice. So just stuff like that. And sometimes I just feel like, oh, Kevin has a goofy thing that he can do here. And so every now and then I'll just tailor it a little more to one of us. But even in the Mystery Science Theater days, it was just like mostly just your turn for a joke,
Mm-hmm. So the greatest epic thing that I think that you could have possibly done, and you did it, and it's now a tradition in my household, so I want to thank you for it, is the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh my God.
Now, did you see the Star Wars Holiday Special when it aired originally?
No, I didn't. I had just heard of it as a dark rumor. I didn't even believe in it for a while. But people assured me it was a real thing. And then, yeah. And then I was convinced people had convinced me that it was a real thing after a while, but I never really saw it for years. I think I only saw it like for the first time 2 years before we actually riffed it. And my jaw is still agape from my first experience with it. It's like, these are actually the people. I can't believe it. I cannot believe this is Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford for real.
And Princess Leia singing, Carrie Fisher singing over the Star Trek or the Star Wars theme song.
Oh my God.
Sour note, the high note that just, it's just
poor thing. And then to make it even more campy brilliant, you get these sort of fading stars of yesteryear like Art Carney and Beatrice Arthur, just Harvey Korman. I mean, I guess it wasn't yesteryear at the time, but even then they were a little long in the tooth for the Star Wars canon.
But Art Carney, what did he do? What did he do to himself in that show?
I feel like he was paying off a debt to the mob or something. I don't know. Poor guy.
Oh, he just seemed so uncomfortable, and he made me uncomfortable. And I'm like, but you're Art Carney. How did this happen?
I know.
Oh, it's terrible. But yeah,
Academy Award winner.
Your take on it, I mean, you guys handled it really, really beautifully. It is now a Christmas tradition. I mean, most people cannot get through that. I still have trouble getting through the porno scene. And yes, there was a porno scene in the Star Wars Holiday Special of sorts.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. And it's weird because you can almost give them points for being prescient about a certain kind of carnal activity that really was not, I don't think it was around in the 70s when they did it, but it was basically cyber, jacking off. And of course they didn't show that, but that was strongly implied, and with the most disgusting person on the other end, the most disgusting Wookiee. The old grandpa with the unhinged jaw. Just, oh God.
Yeah.
Bad choice.
What was the pinnacle of the Star Wars Holiday Special to you? I mean, what was the best moment?
Well, that might have been it. And best may not apply here, but it's like just like absolutely rocked. Like, I can't believe this is part of Star Wars canon. I mean, it isn't obviously now, but at one point the creators of Star Wars thought that this would do for Star Wars. And it's worth remembering, I think, that it really wasn't. I mean, it was an incredibly popular movie, but nobody knew it would be like they'd still be making Star Wars movies in 40 years. And the people who grew up with it and just got it in their bones and watched it, dozens of times, had only pretty recently experienced it for the first time. And there were all sorts of cheesy toys. And like now, I guess.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that weird. I did see it as a kid, and it made me very sad and confused. I remember going to bed and feeling uneasy.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my God, poor little Ethan.
Yeah, I was just like, none of that made any sense to me. And grown-ups, there's something going on in the grown-ups world that I will never understand, I thought. And it wasn't that weird though, because the Star Wars cast was showing up on TV left and right. And you're right, I don't think they realized it would be a trilogy and then a big thing. It was just people liked the characters. So C-3PO and Luke Skywalker were showing up on the Muppet Show and things like that.
That's right.
So it wasn't all that unusual. All right, so the next RiffTrax moment where you guys achieved utter greatness, and now it's unfortunately, I think it has jumped the shark. But at the time, you guys really pushed this, The Room.
Yeah.
Now, don't you just want to say to what's this movie that's out here right now?
The Disaster Artist.
Yeah, don't you want to just say you guys are like 3 years too late on that?
Well, you know what? To be fair, we were years late on that ourselves. I mean, we were aware of it, but it was a phenomenon, at least in LA, way before we did it. And, and it was a source of great, somewhat mystery, but also just amusement for people in LA that his billboard was up there right on Highland Avenue. for years. So he was discovered in a way before us, but I think and that's one of the few movies where I advise people, like, don't go right to the RiffTrax. Like, look at it yourself first. And then, because it's weird and it's a little disturbing and it's funny as hell if you have that kind of sense of humor. And I did, actually. I really got a kick out of it, although it made me a little squirmy when I heard, like, what it was like to work with him. But then we did it, and we had some contact with him, and he threatened to sue us because he didn't understand we were just releasing an MP3. He being Tommy Wiseau, obviously. Yeah. But then when we wanted to do it as a live show, Greg Sestero was a real mensch about it, and we were sort of in touch on social media, and I asked if he could hook me up with the man. And I was plugging his book, because his book is really good. The Disaster Artist as a book is really, if you've seen The Room a couple of times, it's kind of fascinating, because he did work with a really good and funny writer, and it's just sort of cracked some of the mysteries of how that piece of dookie got made. But yeah, I have to say, at this point, I feel like if we keep beating that horse, then the more fool us, because it's sort of like it's over. That's enough.
All right, let's turn this over.
I was just going to say, that being said, if they re-release our RiffTrax of The Room from a couple of years ago, I will be thumbs up, but I don't want to actually do it live anymore.
Oh, is it not available for purchase right now?
It isn't, because Tommy Wiseau does not like he doesn't trust the digital world, and he did not want to give us digital streaming rights. So yeah, I mean, he gave us rights for that night for the RiffTrax live show, but digital streaming rights were not cool by him. He doesn't even have, like, until recently anyway, he didn't even have The Room itself on iTunes. I think he's very superstitious. And we were telling him, look on Pirate Bay, it's already there, and you're not getting paid for it. You might as well make some money.
What a goofball. Well, screw him. I have it in my RiffTrax library. I watched it last week. So
there you go.
I'm going to turn this over to questions. We got about 15 minutes to get some questions for Bill Corbett. And the first one is kind of along the lines of what you just said. Are there any movies that besides The Room, that RiffTrax or Mystery Science Theater is known for, that you would actually watch without the riffing and enjoy just because of the oddity of it?
For a while, the answer might have been Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny, but I think I've had my fill of that. But for a while, I could just watch it over and over again and marvel that humans actually got together and decided to do this.
It's so odd. And
I'm still kind of into the comedies of James Nguyen, the auteur director of Birdemic. And if people who know him from Birdemic, we have a couple of other titles through RiffTrax that are amazing too. And it's unendingly hilarious to me, at least now, that he is so obsessed with Silicon Valley and stock options, and no matter what else he's talking about, whether it's reincarnation or virtual reality or bird attacks, he always comes down to some doofus getting stock options.
All right, so Chamber Hawking wants to know, do you wish superhero movies would go away?
Not really. I mean, I don't know. I guess I feel like if they keep making them pretty well, then why not? Maybe what I object to is the fact that they seem to be such a high percentage of the movie industry now. But I don't know, if they're done well, and it's a hard thing to do well, I don't see any reason why they can't keep going on. I don't have to watch them.
Okay, Scott Pickering says, did you watch the recent Gamera movies from the 1990s?
No, I didn't. I think we're scheduled to get RiffTrax together and take a look at them next time we're all in the same place. But no, I haven't seen them yet. Are they good?
Oh, I wouldn't think so.
Is
I guess if you
he
like that
still
kind of
made of
thing.
turtle meat? Or is it like vegan stuffing Gamera?
Craig S says, "How did you find the movie Birdemic? What a masterpiece of bad filmmaking."
Oh man, you're speaking to my heart now. I still love Birdemic, and you know, I may be a turncoat on it someday, like I am now for The Room, but at least at present, I'm still deeply in love with it. But that's another one where by the time we got to it, it did have a bit of a reputation. And I never know how mainstream some of these things are, because the people who seek out really wretched movies like The Room or Birdemic tend to find us pretty quickly. so I think maybe I perceive all of them as being more of a wave than I thought. But yeah, Birdemic is great, and we found it mostly by people kept mentioning it to us. And when we get a critical mass of that from enough people, we're like, we really have to look at this.
Do you have a Crow T robot in your house?
I don't.
Why?
Why? Well, you know what? I don't. I didn't get one from the show, which is a shame on Best Brains for not just giving me the puppet.
Yeah.
But they were eBay. They were like auctioning everything on eBay, including my personal like couch, which was in my office. I brought it in a U-Haul when I started working there for a while, and then I was coming in towards the end of the last season, and I noticed it had a tag for like the auctioneers. It's like, I ripped it off. Like, come on, man.
Everything.
But no, I really should get one or build one myself, because it's really dumb that I don't have one. And when I do conventions, which I don't do that often, but I really should have a Crow to just talk to people with.
Yeah, there's a guy on eBay who makes really, really good ones, and they're not very expensive. I mean, it'd be a good thing.
There's a bunch of people who are really masterful at it, and I really like there are kits and there are specs that people can follow. But Trace was saying this to me last time I saw him. He really appreciates when people kind of wing it themselves and do their own version, even if they're slightly different. It's cool to see, like, it's almost like an artist's rendering of Crow in 3D.
What was your favorite superhero movie to riff? Thanks, Bootsy One.
Probably the Avengers state, because I enjoyed it as a movie for the most part, but it also had some big fun targets on its back without it getting too mirthless. Like some of the ones we do are just, I'm just not a fan. I've never been a big fan, and this is not going to make me popular with a lot of people, but I've never been a fan of the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight series, particularly. While appreciating it and thinking Christopher Nolan is a very, very smart filmmaker, but when we did it, it just felt like so grim and so not fun. And that's where we should usually come in and make it fun. And it's a popular riff, but something about it just dragged me down. And maybe it was just the writing, trying to write jokes to it. Maybe,
Well, Drake Tungsten actually says, please riff Batman Begins. So
maybe. I don't know.
You guys never
that
did.
Feels a little bit like in, what's that?
It might be too late to do that. I don't know.
That's kind of, I was about to say a variation on that. It just feels like that's pretty far in the past now. We've gone pretty far ahead in DC movie universe, for better or worse.
No comment. Joe Smith says, who made that awesome opening logo for MST3K? What was it made from? I think the planet.
Oh, the planet. I used to pass it every day, and I'm not exactly sure what it was made of, but I know there was lighter than it looked. And yeah, it was made in house. I think combination of probably Jeff Maynard, our tool master, and Patrick Brantzig, and our prop and set people were so great and so fast that we were lucky to have them.
Could you do Crow one more time and say, "Hey, Nurkish, how you doing?"
Nurkish?
Yeah.
Is that the name? Hey, Nurkish, how you doing?
Excellent. He's your biggest fan. Okay.
Okay, Nurkish.
He's like, you better
I didn't ruin the fandom by messing up your name.
No, you got it perfect.
Excellent.
Jeff Myers says, were the nicknames in Space Mutiny all off the cuff, or were they worked up over time?
Well, like a lot of the writing on the show, I mean, they were spontaneous in the moment when, as that process I described earlier of somebody frantically trying to type and keep up with all the chatter in the room. But there were a whole bunch more that were sort of repetitive or kind of also rans that didn't make it in there. And we probably rewrote some of them so that there was a little more variety. So the product of some improvisatory moments, but then, second drafted.
Benjamin Maxwell, thanks for the super chat. Favorite Joel episode and Mike episode, please.
Well, I still think because it was so important to my love of the show that Ma is probably my favorite Joel episode, even though I've come to feel a little squirmy about the movie because it looks like
which was it? Your voice kind of
Manos, the Hands of Fate.
Oh, definitely.
Which is a pretty classic one to like, but that's one of my first that solidified my love of the show, and I just thought Joel was kind of pitch perfect in it. My favorite Mike episode, sort of egotistic, kind of the ones that I was in with him, because I remember that would probably be well, for Mike actually it might be Time Chasers. Just I'm getting confused and disoriented like a middle-aged dude, but I think that's the one where he played multiple characters, including his brother Eddie and his younger self in the cheese factory.
Yes. And you tried to tell him that about his future, and
yes, and that might not be my favorite movie, but that might be my favorite overall Mike performance, and it showed once again how great an actor Mike Nelson is, and how great a comic actor he is. That he did all those flavors, and then still had the default of Mike himself. So that was a lot of fun to watch him get into being his older, meaner brother.
Well, and also, yeah, when one wonders when you went back in time to talk to Mike as a kid, what was he doing? Yeah, he was working at the cheese factory, I guess. Did that bear any resemblance to Mike at any point in his life?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I mean, I think he jokes about it. And of course, he's always been a very smart guy with a very artsy bent in a lot of ways. Musically, he was a music major and, very well read, but he is still like a big blonde guy from Wisconsin who did work at a cheese co-op. So that place was based on a factory that he worked at. It was called a co-op, but it was basically a factory. So yeah, and so he knows kind of the white trash world of Wisconsin very well, and that's what those two characters were based on. And the version of him there with the sort of frosted sunglasses or whatever you call them, and the hairnet, and just the dumbass, I want to be a rock star thing was just perfect, I thought.
It was great. All right, so Anderson Paladin, thanks for the super chat. Tigtone sequel, when? I need to know what happened to the beans.
I'm not sure which one you saw. Tigtone is a thing, and it's going to be on Adult Swim, and I'm doing a voice for it, but it's not probably going to be for a while because they're currently animating it, and that takes forever. But take a look for it. But the reason I'm confused about, I'm not sure which version of it your guest saw, is that there was a pilot, a little sample thing that I was in where I played a different character, and that found its way online. And then there was an actual real pilot that Adult Swim did that was a little more like the show is going to be. But it's really It's weird. I don't know what I'm saying half the time, but it's fun so far.
John Doe, great question. Was Observer's brain made of delicious lime jello?
The brain itself wasn't, but the stuff around it, and then maybe that's what you're referring to, literally was jello of some flavor, maybe like blue raspberry or something like that. But it was, yeah, it was literally jello. You guessed correctly.
Who created Observer? Where did the idea come from?
Observer was I mean, the probably too long version of it is this, that when we got to the Sci-Fi Channel, they got really enamored with the idea of it being a show that goes from planet to planet. And so we started off with the Planet of the Apes world, where I think people kind of, Mike at least, or maybe Jim Mallon, just wanted to stay there because they built a very nice set for it. But then Sci-Fi Channel was like, okay, we've been there long enough, so let's move on. And so he came up with the idea for the Observer Planet, partially because it was so abstract and the set was so nothing really. It was just a bunch of, screens and very austere and weird. But the characters themselves were kind of based on, if anybody knows the 60s Star Treks, or even the New Generation, where Q is there, like these all-powerful beings who capture, the very mortal crew and start messing with them. But I like the idea, and I think we all did, of these guys being very powerful, but also idiots and really pretentious. So much so that they kind of lost their way and now carried their brains around. So that was the big joke. But for me, the Observers, and especially Brain Guy, as he later became called, were really based on like very accomplished English actors who wound up in kind of low-rent sci-fi stuff, and that character later was part of the Tim Allen movie. His name is escaping me right now. Alan Rickman, by Grabthar's Hammer. Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest, yes.
Galaxy Quest. So that became a trope on its own. But to me, it was always like we were seeing all these Universal movies from the 50s where there would be these dignified English actors, but they would have like crap all over their face, and they would be made up, and they'd be in these robes. They'd be from other planets, and you could just tell that they were like, I did Richard III at Stratford, and now I'm like the mole people guy.
So, all right, this is your final question, and it's a great question. This is a crowd pleaser, and then I'll let you go. Guys, Bill let me know that he's going to actually go have movie night with his family, which is wonderful on two different fronts. A, he's a great family man, but B, imagine having a dad like Bill Corbett to watch movies with. I mean, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
My kids are not as enthusiastic as you, but they're, to me, to them, I'm just dad.
Oh, well, very uncool. So much fun for everyone else. This is a great question. So, Bill, in your opinion, and KSSS, thank you. In your opinion, is The Last Jedi MST3K or RiffTrax caliber?
Hell yes. I mean, I would say that, we have done movies that we actually like, and we made a big point of that by riffing Casablanca a few years ago, that we feel like we're nimble enough to shift gears between absolute pieces of garbage like, Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny. That's like the extreme pole on one way. And then actually pretty decent movies on the other end, if we don't make fun of the movies themselves and make it more about like, we're going to make this a fun, just a fun soundtrack to hear along with it, especially if you've watched a movie a whole bunch of times and you know it well enough so that you won't get annoyed at us.
So your vote
I think they are
pretty good movie.
Yeah. I don't have gigantic feelings about Star Wars the way that some people do. And I don't know what it is about me. I feel culturally out of step. I enjoy them, but I don't feel that invested in them. I felt so-so about the last two movies, but my kids like them, so that was enough for me.
Wonderful. People are saying we owe you a part of our childhood, and I think that's a good note.
I'll give it back, I swear.
Phil, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. You made a lot of people happy tonight, and bless you. You're wonderful.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Ethan. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take good care. Good night, everyone.